Rise and fall of the Evil Within game franchise. The Evil Within is a survival horror video game developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda Softworks that was released worldwide in 2014 for Windows, PlayStation, and Xbox. Players combat disfigured, nightmarish-like creatures, including bosses, using guns and melee weapons, and move through horrific landscapes, avoiding traps, utilizing stealth, and discovering collectibles in this third-person game. Following the moderate success of the first game, a sequel was also released 3 years later. So stay with us to find out what happened to one of the most exciting franchises, also directed by a legendary game designer, and how the franchise came to an unfortunate pause in this video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Rise of Evil Within. The Evil Within follows in the footsteps of director Shinji Mikami's previous efforts into the genre, the cult classic Resident Evil 4. It's not just a copy of that game, though. Mikami and his new production firm, Tango Gameworks, have created a game that's more difficult and dismal. Not that the plot is very unique for the horror genre. The Evil Within is a psychological thriller about an apparent multiple killing at Beacon Mental Hospital in Crimson City, until you find things aren't as they seem. While the underlying mystery is initially intriguing, it progressively deviates from the path and finally falls under the weight of its own misplaced ambition. Sebastian Castellanos, the protagonist of the game, whom you might find impersonal and so calm to the point of almost a parody, is dragged through a twisted universe filled with nightmare settings and terrifying beings. In the Evil Within's 15 chapters, Tango has built some extremely bizarre and amazing locations. Even horror tropes have been creatively twisted and distorted. Meat lockers, noisy industrial interiors, and mannequins have all been given new and horrific life. Interiors in The Evil Within are gritty, full of overhanging shadows, grandiose architecture, and scary escape routes. Thanks to Tango's strong sense for composition, they generate a dreadful sense of impending doom. You will be terrified by your own shadow, or believe that someone is following you when there is no one behind you, except for distant, hostile growls. The single-player plot is divided into chapters, which players must finish in order to advance. The storyline is simple. After hearing a high-pitched noise, Crimson City Police Detective Sergeant Sebastian Castellanos, who will be you, your partner Joseph Oda, and Junior Detective Julie Kidman are unexpectedly plunged into an unreal world while investigating the site of a mass murder at Beacon Mental Hospital. In this world awaits terrible monsters who will try to kill you while you try to look for answers. The game is played from a third-person perspective, and scavenging for resources and knowing whether to fight or escape are crucial to surviving the game's dangers, such as bear traps, barbed wire traps, bombs, and spike traps. Also, the creatures such as the Hunted, the game's most common enemy, Reborn Laura, a multi-limbed, long-haired, crawling creature, Ruvik, the game's main antagonist, the Keeper, a large humanoid with a head as strong as a safe, wielding a large meat tenderizer hammer, and Sadist, a big humanoid with a blood-stained chainsaw and a spiky metal mask over his face. You must live by utilizing the surroundings and items that you may come across during programmed events, and as a result of user activities, the game environment might change, modifying locales and establishing new routes or teleporting you to other areas. To regain your health, you must utilize medicinal goods, some of which provide temporary hallucinogenic effects. Players may improve Castellanos' power by finding vials of a particular green gel concealed around the game. Improvements include more ammo, more stamina, and increased health. You have a safe house at your disposal called Safe Haven, which you can visit via locating mirrors or through scripted events. The Safe House is a mental hospital with numerous facilities available to the player, including a save point, an upgrading room, where the player may improve Sebastian's skills, and the safe room, where keys are used to open storage safes containing helpful things like green gel and ammo. Finding and destroying Madonna statues concealed throughout the game's stages yields these keys: a revolver, shotgun, sniper rifle, dagger, grenades, and the Agony crossbow, a projectile weapon that fires bolts capable of freezing, blinding, electrocuting, or destroying foes, are among the weapons you can use. Weapon ammunition is rare, but mechanical components may be gathered to create more bolts. Bombs are a type of component that reacts to the player's approach or movement. They can be affixed to walls or floors, placed in chests, or purchased from vending machines. A minigame can be used to detonate them. Melee combat is solely intended to put space between the player and the enemy, albeit the player can kill some adversaries who are unaware of them after sneaking up behind them. Downed or crippled enemies can be resurrected. To prevent this, players can use a limited quantity of matches to set fire to the downed creature or adversary, thereby permanently defeating them. Bottles, for example, can be found in the environment, and you can toss them to shock or distract attackers. In The Evil Within, there are 7 main categories of collectibles. Sebastian's personal journal, chronicling his life as a detective, as well as his life with his wife and kids, is called Personal Documents. Documents are other characters' personal journals. Map fragments are bits of the game's map that are gathered and kept at the safe house once they have been found. Newspapers are publications that cover events related to or featuring Sebastians. Missing persons posters, which feature people Sebastian meets during the game who have gone missing. Audio cassettes are tapes that include a playable recording that is recorded by characters throughout the game. Collectibles can be found in the safe house or on the levels themselves. For finishing the game, the player receives a number of incentives. Some of the unlocks include more weaponry, character models, and biographies. It also unlocks the Akumu difficulty, which is the game's harshest difficulty level, and New Game Plus. The Evil Within's basic upgrading system is one of the game's most engaging elements. As previously said, the green gel is a limited resource that you spend in safe houses to increase your abilities, weapons, stock, and crossbow bolts. It's spread around the globe like buried gold, becomes your most sought-after resource, while using this gel creates tough decisions. Do you want to improve your shotgun power? Or do you want to be able to run much longer? You'll be able to create your own gameplay style, giving you a fleeting, though illusory, impression of control over the scenario. After the moderate success, a sequel was also made 3 years later, and it was named The Evil Within 2, which is also a survival horror game like the first game, also developed and published by the same organizations. The STEM engine, a modified id Tech 5 engine, was used to create the game. Shinji Mikami, the series' creator, does not have executive influence over the game's production, unlike the original chapter. He does, however, remain on board as an advisor and overseer, while game director duties were taken up by John Johannes. The game is a survival horror game. The player gets control of investigator Sebastian Castellanos like the first part, who must descend into the realm of Union to rescue his daughter Lily in this third-person viewpoint game. The Evil Within 2's gameplay, on the other hand, is far more refined than the previous game's awkward and unsettling mechanics. To begin with, Sebastian's mobility has been substantially smoothed down, allowing him to better manipulate his surroundings during battle or when creeping with greater elegance. Sebastian can brace against covers, peek out at opponents, and circle corners to get away from them with ease. And thanks to cover features from the Kidman DLC from the original game, which has been integrated into this game as well, the gunplay has also been upgraded, with roughly triple the number of unique firearm varieties compared to the previous game. Casual, Survival, and Nightmare are the 3 difficulty levels available, with the latter option being suggested for gamers who appreciated the previous game's difficulty curve. The levels are bigger, and players can go through a level in a variety of ways. The player is also given an item called the Communicator, which serves to emphasize the game's objectives, resources, and adversaries. It also exposes resident spots, which provide information about what transpired in Union's universe. Players are free to roam the map region, completing side tasks and scouting for valuable resources. You can also engage in direct combat with foes using weapons such as firearms, or they can employ stealth to avoid detection or slip behind enemies to kill them discreetly. Players may acquire materials to make new things such as ammunition in the game's crafting system. Players can make goods at any moment during the game, however, Using a workbench uses fewer materials. There is also a customization system. The green gel reappears, serving the same purpose as in the previous game, to improve Sebastian's stats such as movement, speed, stamina, maximum health, and damage resistance, as well as to grant new abilities such as slowing down time while trying to shoot, stealth attack from cover, and the ability to automatically dodge certain attacks. Weapon components may be gathered and used to enhance weapons' firepower, rate of fire, capacity, and reload speed, but they can no longer be used to upgrade guns. The option to play The Evil Within 2 is entirely in the first-person view, is an added feature. The mode, which was added to the game engine as a one-time novelty in Chapter 4, was available through a console command that was popular with gamers. As a response, Tango Gameworks has added the option to the game via Update 1.04, along with further adjustments to weapon animations and stealth kill prompts to solve minor problems. And the options menu, you may toggle the first-person mode on and off. Midway through the first chapter, the perspective will shift and the game will periodically convert to third person during scripted sequences, but the first-person experience will be near seamless otherwise. The story goes somewhat like this. Sebastian Castellanos has left the Crimson City Police Department 3 years after the events of the previous game, plagued by his experiences in the Beacon Mental Hospital. His only kid, Lily, is said to have died in a home fire, and his wife, Myra, who was unable to accept her daughter's loss, abandoned him. Sebastian becomes an alcoholic as a result of this, as well as his trauma. Sebastian is drowning his sorrows in a pub when he is approached by Julie Kidman, a former colleague and Mobius agent, who claims that Lily is still alive. Sebastian is dragged against his will to a secret Mobius facility, where he meets the administrator, the institution's boss. When Sebastian arrives at the Union, he sees that the town has devolved into a nightmare realm, with all of the residents either slain or changed into monsters. Just like the previous game, Sebastian would have to overcome tricky puzzles and fight against horrific creatures in order to rescue his daughter. Both the games got positive reviews from the critics. The gameplay of the first part was heavily praised. However, the story was a bit criticized as it seemed a bit confusing and unnecessarily complex. Few critics even found the protagonist's character to be boring. The Evil Within falls short of becoming Mikami's magnum work in far too many ways. It artificially drives players into severe combat circumstances more often than can be ignored, and promising stories and concepts fizzle out in a depressing manner. Still, it would be a mistake to reject all of its positive aspects. Between a truly fascinating gore fest, fantastic emotions of success caused by the imposing difficulty, and a narrative that gets to the heart of some really disturbing ideas, The Evil Within delivers plenty to the table to warrant a try. The Evil Within 2, on the other hand, allows you greater freedom to explore a far larger survival horror playground than the first game. The protagonist and plot issues are still there, but there are plenty of monsters to keep you jumpy and on the edge of your seat all the time. The part which we found most interesting is that while playing this game, you don't always have to be in action. You can also take a stealthy approach if you want to. In true survival horror fashion, much of the thrill in The Evil Within 2 comes from being discovered and having to rush into a fight with whatever supplies you have on hand. So yeah, if we compare them, then obviously the second part is better because it improves on the issues which were there in the previous game. But even the first game is by no means a disappointing affair. Here's a fun fact. Resident Evil is also known as The Evil Within. The meaning of both titles is the same. Not only this, but there are various Easter eggs in the game that allude to previous Resident Evil titles. The first time you see a haunted in the game, it's precisely like the first time you see a zombie in Resident Evil. The mansion also looks a lot like the original Resident Evil mansion.
Your death will be art. It's time to put a signature on it. It's going to hurt.
Fall of Evil Within. There was a lot to like about The Evil Within. A new plot, a new developer, and the same person behind Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, Resident Evil 4, and even Vanquish. What could possibly go wrong? To summarize, almost nothing went wrong. The Evil Within didn't reinvent the wheel as Resident Evil 4 did, nor did it set the survival horror world on fire in any revolutionary way. but it did bring a creepy atmosphere, an intriguing storyline, and a few neat ideas that were largely borrowed from many of Mikami's previous games, but still added up to a well-crafted horror action experience here. The two-part game series gets a lot of things right, while also getting a few things wrong. This is true of practically every outstanding game, despite the fact that it is unlikely to make enough money to support the third game at this time. The Evil Within as a franchise faces a far deeper and more catastrophic problem. The Evil Within, unlike its more popular competitors, lacked an X-factor that made it stand out in the horror genre. The famous zombies, the mansion, Nemesis, Raccoon City, Jill, Leon, and Claire all appear in Resident Evil games. The huge foggy ghost town of Silent Hill has unfathomable monsters lurking around every corner, and the characters' internal demons merge in with the exterior terror in ways that make them unrecognizable from each other for the most part. Amnesia is known for its groundbreaking first-person minimalism, horror, and sanity management. Even Outlast, despite its flaws, has excellent night vision, battery management, and stealth that feels quite realistic. What, on the other hand, do the Evil Within games have? What is their real name? What role do they play? Sebastian isn't particularly interesting, and probably never will be. The story of both games is often meandering, unfocused, and only gives glimpses of greatness in their final acts long after you've probably lost interest in them. And the gameplay itself, while serviceable, offers almost nothing new. The entire STEM thing is a fascinating notion for facilitating terror in a different way, but it ended up being far too complicated and cerebral to be a genuine classic horror setting. Despite the fact that these two games nail a lot of the fundamentals, there was never a compelling reason to rank them with the genre's greats.
Meet my beautiful Obscura.
Is there going to be The Evil Within 3? So, will The Evil Within ever return? The Evil Within dude did not sell well, which is unfortunate for those who are looking for a new game. It was reported in the UK sales figures for the week when The Evil Within 2 was released that the sequel's sales were only roughly a third of those of the original game. Granted, this is based on physical sales, which have steadily declined over the years, but it's still a poor predictor of the game's performance. For what it's worth, Tango and Bethesda have re-registered the copyright for The Evil Within as recently as last year, so there's a possibility, at the very least, that the third game isn't completely off the table. Tango is now working on Ghostwire Tokyo, a first-person horror coom shooter game set to release on PS5 this year. It's also worth noting that Tango was acquired as part of Microsoft's acquisition of ZeniMax Bethesda, so their future initiatives may be scrutinized more closely than previously. Tango may be entrusted with finishing Ghostwire Tokyo instead of working on The Evil Within, depending on the popularity of the game, which may or may not end up on Xbox after a year. Being a part of the Xbox Game Studios family may, on the other hand, allow another developer to take up the development of The Evil Within. The good news is that Tango Gameworks and John Johannes, the director of The Evil Within 2, are collaborating on a new game. Given the quality and history of the creators involved, this enigmatic project was verified during Xbox's exhibit at Tokyo Game Show 2021, and all indicators point to it being The Evil Within 3. This isn't definitive proof, but it's the greatest hope we have for a third game in the series. The Evil Within's future is so unknown. There's a possibility for Tango or another developer to revisit the series in a third game, but without a definitive answer on whether or not it will return, the series' future remains uncertain. Perhaps we'll see it at E3 or the Game Awards in the coming years, or perhaps we won't see it for a decade until someone remakes the original one. Only time will tell if this is true. That's it for this one. If you like this video, then don't forget to like, share, and comment. If you are new to our channel, then please subscribe. See you in the next one.